Hi, guys.
Hi.
I'm going to leave it right here.
Yeah, so you can see yourself.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
No. So for those of you that are on Facebook Live, we're going to get started here. I think I'm just going to have to leave my phone sitting right there. I'll share the PowerPoint and things and the notes in the group after we're all done so that you can have those. I was telling them I've put the notes together and I pulled from a lot of different resources, so I'll share those so you guys can go and teach this yourselves. But this is my first time teaching this class, and so a lot of this is kind of bits and pieces of things I've heard here and there, but then kind of going through the sources. And some of these oils I was able to find like a lot of really great information on. Some of them it's not a lot, or it's not as much. But I mean, when you've got this much to go through, that's fine. So, but some of the sources that I used were the Healing Oils of the Bible book. He's got a full book. This is just the booklet, but by Dr. David Stewart. He is a minister and a physician. So he comes at it from two different perspectives, and he's been a Young Living member since the late 90s. So he's been with Young Living for a very long time. He also does like Chemistry of Essential Oils Made Simple and some books like that out there. So if you really like all the science stuff behind it, he's got some really great things. But he has a really, so he comes at it with David Stewart, Dr. David Stewart. He's got a website out there. He's one of those people that is like so connected to Young Living. Like when people see him, he's been with Young Living forever. He's a Young Living member and a leader. And so, anyways, and he's a very, very sweet man. I've never met him personally, but just his videos and stuff. So if you ever go to convention or something like that, look up some of his videos and you can keep an eye out for him, because he's the type, from what I've heard, he's the type of guy you can just walk up to and say hi to, and he'll talk to you. So, anyways, but this book really talks a lot about not just oils in the Bible, but just ancient times in general. The kit's obviously called Oils of Ancient Scripture. Well, I'm going to be really pulling from a very Christian perspective, biblical perspective. So, and that's what he does too. But he also talks about how in the Bible, even though oils are mentioned a whole lot, they really don't. Can you turn the music off back there? Sorry, I forgot to do that. They don't talk a lot about how they used them. He said because the Bible was really that was not the purpose of the Bible. The Bible was about, our Creator and that relationship and telling the story of God and our salvation, all of those things. That was the purpose of the Bible. So when the Bible talks about how to use oils, it's almost always in a spiritual kind of context, because that was what God was teaching. But he said, but the reality is, it would be like if we were to read, if somebody were going to write something about the Christian church today and talk about Tylenol or aspirin and go in and then describe how to use it, like it would be irrelevant to the actual topic. Even if it was mentioned, and then they use Tylenol, and then it would just be mentioned in passing because it was such a part of the culture that people didn't even think about it. So a lot of the things when we talk about how they were used, it talks about just kind of historically how they were used during that time. But what I really am excited about talking about today is really focusing on that scriptural, biblical, spiritual side of the oils that can sometimes be a little kind of, it's weird because the Christian church completely pulls away from it because New Age has taken it, and kind of taken it over. So how can we reclaim that? Because there is biblical basis for using the oils in a spiritual and emotional way. And so we're going to talk about how that's a reality, and it's not something anti-biblical, but it actually is reinforced in the Bible and in the Word of God. So some of the things I want to read from here directly is talking about, one of the things he said is he talks about the intelligence, God's intelligence in the oils. And he says, because they are direct creation of God's Word, when properly applied in a prayerful way, they possess the divine intelligence to know how to do what is beneficial and avoid doing that which may bring harm. And so when we talk about using the oils in our body, God created that. And it is something that our bodies recognize and can utilize. It's like when we eat food, works in our body in a certain way. Our body's created to use that in that way. And the plants were used not only for nutritional support and things like that, but also to support our bodies in other ways. Okay, oils and emotions. I'm going to read like this whole little section here because it's really good. And I like the way that he puts it. He says, one of the most powerful healing aspects of essential oils is their ability to penetrate the so-called blood-brain barrier. When you breathe oil molecules into the back passages of your nose, they go straight to the brain in a central part called the amygdala. Have any of you guys ever read anything from Dr. Caroline Leaf? Mm. She is awesome. She's a Christian neuroscientist. She doesn't talk anything about oils, but she talks a lot about our emotions and our brains and how we process emotions. And the amygdala is basically the library of your brain. You store all of the memories, and then immediately through anytime you experience something, you experience it through your perspective. Through that, kind of like we were talking about. We were talking about Mission Trip earlier, and how that changes your perspective. It changes because you can see a different worldview. You can see just a different life. And so instead of then filtering, you realize then that everything you see and perceive is filtered through your memories. So this is a great example. If you have something happen to you, that say somebody says something to you, somebody that you love, I'll use a personal example from my life, okay? So if my husband says something to me, there may be times when he says something to me and I react, maybe overreact. What he said was not anything, he just makes a comment, but if that comment was said to me by somebody else at some point in my life that meant it, and they meant it in a negative way, and my husband just says it just in passing, and this has happened in our lives. I can't think of an exact example to really, because I would share with you, but I would overreact because immediately through my brain, I'm filtering it through that experience in the past. And we do that all the time, every day. And so it's kind of one of what the oils are able to do is they're able to communicate with that part of our brain to help us really understand those experiences, to dig down. Sometimes those experiences and the ways that we react, we don't even know why we reacted that way. We never remember the initial experience, but our brain does. And here he talks about that part of the brain does not understand words and cannot be communicated with spoken or written language. It responds only to smell. Hence, essential oils provide a powerful means to contact that nonverbal portion of our brains that stores our feelings and emotions. This is why when you smell apple pie, you may find yourself back in your grandmother's kitchen as a little child. That is why the smell of frankincense brings a Catholic back to the sanctuary where they went to church and inhaled that fragrance over so many Sundays. So, how many of you, I'll smell something and it'll evoke an emotion in me and I'll be like, that smell is familiar, and I know that emotion is connected to that smell. I don't even know why. I don't even remember where I smelled it before or what it was. And so that is kind of the power that the oils can have with our emotions. And so kind of talking from that perspective is where we're going to be going with this. I do want to pass around frankincense while we're here. It's always good to actually use oils when you're talking about oils. And frankincense, we'll talk more about frankincense today, but frankincense is the oil of truth. It helps you separate what is true from what is not. And we'll talk about some of that and why that's really powerful in the sense of what it says in the Bible about frankincense. So anyway, so I'm going to use some. Feel free to use some. I'm sharing my frankincense with you guys. Yeah.
Glad I showed up today.
Go ahead, take some. See, when you don't come in person, you don't get no. So you guys, if you have your kit, get your frankincense out and put some frankincense on. And if it kicks us off here, I'll try to check back in every once in a while and make sure that we're connected here in case it kicks us off.
So how we just did it is a good way to use your oil.
You can, yes. You can put it.
Same question. I've never seen oil used that way.
Just put it on your hands, smell it, rub it on the back of your neck. Yeah, but then you can smell it, and you're getting it topically and aromatically, right? Yeah. It's just easy when you're in public to apply to your hands, smell, and then to your shoulders. You go to any Young Living event, you'll see lots of this. So
well, I was like, that's kind of interesting. And everybody's doing it, so I guess I'll do it that same way.
Well, and I think it's just because when you're in public, but.
Well, that's always how, when I'm applying or sharing or whatever, how do I do that? Because some, you know, you might have an irritant to it.
Yes, yeah.
But there's nothing in, I mean,
Yeah,
there's
frankincense
not a
is really,
or not a, like lime or anything like that.
yeah, citrus.
I brought my book with me today.
Oh, Caroline.
In the mail
Well,
yesterday.
Caroline Leaf is different than Caroline Mean, but that is one of my resources for today too. Caroline Leaf, yes, but Caroline Mean is actually one of the big Caroline Leaf. But Caroline Mean, that book is also, and I have that book back there, is also a resource for today, big time. So, okay, I want to go to something else he talks about that I think is really important, and it's really one of the things, because when I came to essential oils and started using them, it was not from a spiritual perspective. I mean, I'm a believer, I have a relationship with Jesus Christ, and I know that frankincense is used in myrrh, and that was the extent of my knowledge of oils in the Bible. So I didn't come at it from a biblical perspective of, I want to use this on my spiritual life. No, I wanted to use them physically for the health of my family. That was what I used them for. So a lot of times I still don't always apply this as well as I should in complete transparency, and that is prayer with the oils. This is what Dr. Stewart said. He says the point is that the biblical application of essential oils was always with prayer. Sometimes prayer alone will work, sometimes oils alone will work, but the combination is very powerful indeed. Prayer amplifies the power of oils, while oils amplify the power of prayer. The intent and righteousness of the person applying the oil, as well as the faith of the receiver, has a great deal to do with the prognosis for success in healing. So when we're looking at using oils, the biblical context was always using the oils with prayer. And sometimes I go to the oils first, and I don't do prayer along with it. And so that's something I have to work on. Remember, when we're praying with the oils, or if the oils, I'm out and don't have my oils, we're going to pray for this situation. We're going to pray through that. But when we start talking about emotions, and I love this because there's another book that I use called Emotional Healing with Essential Oils. And his little quip here is really good, because what he says is the oils don't do the work for you. Because I think a lot of times that's where you go, okay, well, emotionally, like there's oils called forgiveness and gratitude. Okay, I'm just going to apply that oil and I'm done, No, they don't do the work for us. What he says here is essential oils assist individuals in taking an honest look within. They foster the right environment for healing, but they will not do the work for us. In gardening, it's a common experience to pull the weeds while leaving the roots. This is particularly true for hard and rocky soils. To ensure we uproot the whole plant, we can add water to the soil, which allows the entire weed to be removed. Similarly, essential oils prepare our emotional soil so that weeds may be removed with greater ease. However, they do not do the weeding for us. If one neglects to do the work of pulling their weeds, they have simply watered the problem. That is very interesting perspective. On the other hand, those who combine essential oils with emotional work reap the fruit of their labor. So, that's the perspective that I want to bring to this to you. I do not believe that the oils do the work for us. In combination with intention, I think that it's amazing what they can do, and they prepare in our bodies they prepare our bodies physiologically for the choices that we're going to make on maybe an emotional or spiritual level. And that's something that I've seen and I've experienced in my own life. So, all of that to say, I am going to move into the actual oils now. This is actually, I think I have enough of these for each of you to have one of these. It's just a little booklet, a little pamphlet that talks about each of the oils, and it's by David Stewart also. So, I'm going to be...
Is that available through...
I got this at convention one year.
Yeah.
It may or may not still be available somewhere. I'll have to look. You can probably get it at Life Science Publishers. I want to think I'll have to look and see. It says Sound Concepts. That's probably where I got it. So, sometimes they have all these little things. Oh, that looks interesting, and then you just pick them up because they're all right there for you. Why not?
Collect that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're going to move into the oils, and I'm going to pass them around as we do. Each of these have a verse with them, but a lot of these are mentioned several times throughout Scripture. The essential oils desk reference back there has a whole list that you can just take a picture of scriptures that reference oils. One of the things that David Stewart talks about also is a lot of times they talked about spices. Well, spices back then was not the ground up spices we think of today. A lot of times when they said spices, they were just referring to like, cassia or cinnamon or something like that, but that could have been the oil and they would still call it a spice. So even when you hear spices referenced, that may be an oil is actually what they were talking about. So I'm going to pass these around so you can smell them. This is aloes, also known as sandalwood. So you're free to open it and smell it. This is called the oil of sacred devotion. So when you, and I love sandalwood.
It's in a lot of perfumes.
Mm-hmm.
It used to be.
Yeah.
I don't know if it still is.
It's really high in sesquiterpenes. So to give you just a super quick, like basic oil chemistry lesson, the oils, there are, in oil chemistry, there are monoterpenes, which are the components of the oil that like flow out really easily into the air and you smell them. So oils like peppermint and eucalyptus that are very vapory have a lot of monoterpenes in them. And then the oils that are a little bit more subtle have what we call sesquiterpenes. Those are kind of those oils, those components that stay in the bottle. They don't evaporate very easily. They don't, but they really go into your body well. So when you're looking at oils that are good, that have a lot of sesquiterpenes, I like to apply them topically as opposed to diffusing them in the air. I want to get them into my body. But sesquiterpenes are the components that cross the blood-brain barrier. They're able to cross through there and bring oxygen into the brain. So when you're talking about oils like that, frankincense is one of them, sandalwood, cedar wood, so several of the oils that we're going to be talking about today are high in sesquiterpenes. They're really able to go in and oxygenate the brain and make a difference in that amygdala area. So, and they're also, there are some of the oils that we use for to help tide us with attention and things like that. Those oils that are high in sesquiterpenes. So physically, it's high in sesquiterpenes. It teaches reverence and respect for God. Prepares the spirit to commune with God. Teaches of spiritual devotion and sacrifice, to relinquish material attachments and prioritize God first, which I thought was really interesting. It helps us release our attachment to worldly favor and success and the need for acceptance, and instead instill a deep devotion and love for God. And if you notice here, when you look at this and you look at kind of what is said in some of these resources about what sandalwood is great for, and then you look at the biblical references of it, you can start to see some connections there. So, and there also came Nicodemus, which at first came to Jesus by night and brought a mixture of myrrh, aloes, about 100-pound weight. Do you see the significance of actually saying how much value it was now that you know the significance that sandalwood can hold? Because it's Nicodemus saying, you are more important to me than the value of this. So I just thought that was really interesting. So that's John 19:39 for those of you that are on there. Hi, Jeanette. Jeanette's commenting on us. So it's very calming and emotionally balancing. It can awaken sensuality. It's found in Song of Solomon several times.
That's why it was in perfumes.
That's why there you go. Yes, and there a lot of the verses that I read, it talked about your clothing smelling, or when they were referring to a woman, your clothes, and you just smell of aloes and all of that. So it's very, it was very attractive. It's a very attractive scent. I like the smell of it. I think it's really, and I don't think it's feminine or masculine. It's kind of a neutral scent. So some of the emotions it can help with is codependency on humans, disconnect from God, and you can see how those two relate to each other. Like if you're putting someone else in the place of God, whether that's a person or material things or anything, that's something that you're struggling with, sandalwood might be able to help bring us to a place of really going deep into why am I struggling in this area, and focusing on overcoming that. Emptiness, overthinking, dread, fear, terror, and materialism. So those of us that are disconnected from God are going to deal with fear, terror, that disconnect, that, struggling in those areas, feeling empty, and then materialism, obviously that dependence on something other than God. All of these things are things I did not know about sandalwood before I started this. I saw sandalwood from a physical perspective, the things I know that I can do with sandalwood. It's actually really great for skin too, and supporting your skin. And I know about the effects on the brain. And so for me, that's very helpful. Okay, so we are going to move on to Cassia. Cassia is going to smell very familiar. I hope it's okay. It's Carrie's kit, and I'm opening her oils. I hope it's okay I'm opening them. All the other ones were open. Cassie was the only one that wasn't. She said I could. She said I could. I had most of these, but there are some that I didn't have. And I wanted it to look pretty, and so you see the whole. And we'll talk about the ones that are not in the kit anymore, because they did just change it recently. So about Cassia, Psalms 45:8 says, "All thy garments smell of myrrh and aloes and cassia out of the ivory palaces whereby they have made thee glad." "Thee" should probably be 2 E's, but that's Psalms 45:8. And cassia is known as the oil of self-assurance. I thought this one was so interesting. What do you notice about it?
Yummy.
What does it smell like?
Like honey and cinnamon.
It is like a sweet cinnamon. Even when you taste it, it's very, very hot. I mean, you see it's got the childproof. It's a very hot oil, but it tastes sweet. Like it's very interesting. So Cassia is a really great one. But it's known as the oil of self-assurance.
This one I had.
Just drop it. No. Just,
Like way more than I would have given it credit for before I actually.
Didn't know oils can be sweet, but they can. So sometimes some of those, like I think Light the Fire, is this kind of has a sweet flavor to it. I think it's because it has cassia in it. But here it says essential oils, including cassia, not only affect our physical bodies, but our emotions as well. Unlike our other 4 senses, which reach our conscious brains first, our sense of smell is wired directly to our emotional brain. We've already talked about this. But cassia nourishes our body and spirit by stimulating feelings of joy, happiness, and gladness, and enabling emotional healing. It makes me joyful to smell it. I love the way that it smells. And this is from the book, The Emotional Healing with Essential Oils. It talks about how cassia brings gladness and confidence, so that correlates with what Dr. Stewart says, and it's good for a shy and timid mind. So for people that are kind of timid or scared or uncertain of themselves, cassia can be a great confidence booster. It dispels fear and replaces with self-assurance, challenges you to try even when you fear making mistakes, helps you see your own brilliance, ability, capacity, and potential, and invites one to live to their authentic self. So the emotions that it works on are dependency, embarrassed, hiding, fear, humiliated, insecure, judged, shy, or worthless. So for someone that has really struggled with kind of finding themselves, their own voice, confidence in that, and moving forward in that, cassia can be really helpful. So this is, again, another one that people like to just wear. It talked about the garment smelling of cassia. I mean, I every time I read through one of these, I'm like, I think there are times when I need that oil. I just want to keep this little thing handy and use it. We're going to pass around Cedar Wood, which is another favorite in our house. How many of you guys use Cedar Wood? Cedar Wood's one of the more common ones that I think people use because it's not very expensive, and so and it's really great for sleep, resting your mind at night. here in, I'm going to
Your
move.
mind during the day.
Resting your mind during the day, that's true. It's relaxing, it's calming. Leviticus 14:17 says, and the rest of the oil, a combination of cedar wood, hyssop, and olive, that is in his hand shall the priest put upon the tip of the right ear of him that is to be cleansed, and upon the thumb of his right hand, and upon the great toe of his right foot.
I just read this week.
I think it's so interesting because when you start looking at like the emotional points for releasing emotions, especially looking at the charts in that Carolyn Mean book, you know, those are some of the points that they put that you can put oils specifically for certain kinds of emotional release. And so you can flip through that book back there later and see. So I just think it's very interesting. Here it talks about King Solomon built his palace and temple from unfinished cedar wood. This choice provided Solomon an environment in which he inhaled the molecules of cedar wood continuously, and in which he could think clearly and administer wise decisions. Smelling cedar wood has the following effects: clearing our minds of clutter and clarifying our thinking. So I thought that was very interesting that when I use cedar wood, it's high in sesquiterpenes, so it's going to bring oxygen to the brain, help you think better, think more clearly, and that the wisest man in the world, his house was built of cedar wood. You know, that just cedar wood brings wisdom, right? Okay, but it also is known as the oil of community. So on an emotional level, it can help bring people together and help people bond with others, especially for those with an overdeveloped sense of individuality, making it difficult to be supported by family, friends, or a community. They live on excessive self-reliance. I think we all know people like this. I can be like this. May struggle because of a disconnected feeling from the human family. This can inspire a feeling of belonging, allowing one to receive and support others, to see that they are not alone. Life is a shared experience. It invites us to both give and receive, so we may experience the strength of groups, the supportive power of community, and the joy of relationships. So I think that's again something that I didn't know about cedar wood. But it clears our mind of clutter, clarifies our thinking, and on an emotional level, it can deal with conceit, which you can imagine conceit being the opposite of wisdom, because conceit is we are right, our way is right, we do it ourselves, all this kind of stuff. And sometimes in wisdom, we have to defer to an experience or a perspective that's not our own, one that we may not understand. The inability to form bonds or social roots, loneliness, feeling disconnected from the human family, or someone who's antisocial. So those are the things that cedarwood can help with. Cedarwood helps with so much more than just clearing our minds and sleep.
It's supposed to be good for hair loss too.
Not yet. Keep going. Keep going. We're going to have it. But all the other you are going to be very wise, though. Okay, so we're going to move on to cypress. And cypress is an oil that I have found. There are times when I don't know what oils to use, especially if I'm doing a raindrop or something like that. And I'll just kind of go through my kit and I'll just grab whatever jumps out to me. I just feel, okay, God, just guide me in what we're going to use. And cypress is one of those that jumps out to me more often than I think. Even though I've always felt like I didn't know a whole lot about how it actually worked. But it's the oil of motion and flow. It gets things moving. My friend Tammy always says it moves water. Cypress moves water. But it also creates an energetic flow against stagnation. So that can be on a physical level, that can be on an emotional level or spiritual level. If you're feeling stuck in a rut, stagnant. And one of the things that I really like to do is look at, now that I've learned some of these things about these singles, is go back and look at what I can pinpoint. I bet I can pinpoint some of the blends that they're in, because we know some of the emotional blends. Transformation, I'm going, okay, is cypress in transformation? Because transformation is great for stagnation, when you're feeling stuck, for moving forward, for growing. And so learning some of these things about the singles, I go, okay, bet that's in that blend. Because sometimes it's a little bit easier to know. Oh yeah, they're saying they need Cassia over here. Julianne and Jeanette, hi. Cedar Wood is Julianne's favorite.
What's the verse for that one?
Oh, sorry. The verse for that is Isaiah 41:19. I will plant in the wilderness the cedar, the shittah, and the myrtle, and the oil cypress tree. And this is actually a verse. Isaiah 41 through 43 has been like my chapters for this whole year. But it's talking about having these things together in the wilderness where things are kind of desolate, but God's diverting the streams to, that again, making the water flow, diverting the streams to this grove of trees that we see standing together in the middle of the wilderness. That whole streams in the desert thing, so it's very interesting. So this is one that I did know about cypress moving water. And when those verses jumped out to me, immediately I started looking up the oils that were in it. What do the oils do, and how do they? So some of these I know a little bit more about. At least I've been learning about this past year. But cypress works in the heart and mind to bring flexibility. It helps us let go of the past, and great for those who are mentally, emotionally stuck, stiff, rigid, tense, over-striving, or have perfectionistic tendencies. Stems from a fear and need to control. So trying to force things in life rather than allowing them to unfold naturally. Encourages releasing fear and control to enjoy being alive. And I put trust God here. Because for me, that's what all those chapters are about. It's about, you're in the middle of the wilderness, but I want you to just stay there. Don't try to get yourself out. Just stay there. And I'm going to move the streams toward you. I will bring you what you need during that time. And that's what I think about in those moments, and that's what I think about. And I'm sharing these from my personal perspective and how they're applying to my life. But that's one of the things I think is really great, because then I'm going, man, I need. When I was doing some of this research, it's like, okay, I'm just going to stick that oil in my bag, and it's coming around with me because I need it to be with me all the time. So it gets things moving. It moves water. Some of the emotions it works for is disrespect, controlling, fear, perfectionism, rigidity, stuck, or tense. So those are.
How big of a bottle can I get?
You can get a 15 milliliter. There you go. Okay, now we're going to talk about frankincense. And I know we used frankincense. I learned some really interesting things about frankincense doing this. Obviously, there's a lot on frankincense. But frankincense is known as the oil of truth. It reveals deceptions and false truths. So it can help us in releasing lies, deceptions, negativity. And I associated this when I was doing this is Satan is a liar. We just got out of a thing at our church that was talking about Satan, and just the Bible, what it says, and just hones in on about Satan is that he's the liar. He's a liar, he's a liar, he's a liar. So when I see truth, I go, okay, this is opposite of this. So if frankincense is the oil of truth, and frankincense is the one that we really think of. Anytime they said incense, it was a combination, almost always including frankincense. This was burned in the temple. This was, this is something that God found important, that he mandated. This is the way it needs to be done. So why? And then if you go, okay, frankincense dispels lies, then obviously in God's house, he doesn't want lies to be there. He wants only truth to be there, and that it to be a place where truth is revealed. So it helps us in releasing lies, deceptions, negativity. It creates new perspectives based on God's truth, brings to memory spiritual truths and understanding. And I think so often we get stuck because we have these lies that we believe, and we just, but they're so ingrained in us, we don't even realize that they're there. And I think that's some of the things, those deep roots that we talked about, that frankincense can help uproot and go, what is it deep down that I don't even know is there? And God, show me the truth here. Show me what's real. Help me to let go of this perspective And maybe frankincense with cypress would help with that, you know, the rigidity or holding on to your perspective. But also, beyond all of that, it is known as a father oil. So it helps in your attachment to your father, spiritual growth, and feeling the fatherly love of God. And to me, that has a lot to do with trust. Whether you're talking about truth, God, you know, this is an oil of truth. I'm bringing you truth. It's almost like an open hand from God. Trust me. I'm going to take care of you. I'm trustworthy. I'm bringing you truth. I'm bringing you, you know what I mean? Like, to me, I just kind of have that mental image in my hand. It reminds us that we are loved and protected when we feel abandoned or forgotten. Powerful but gentle, like a father who nurtures, guides, and protects. Shields the body from negative influences and enhances prayer and meditation. So it's also great for the skin. High in sesquiterpenes, so it's great for relaxing the mind, promoting spiritual focus. And the emotions it works for is abandonment, spiritual disconnection, distant from Father, unprotected, spiritual darkness, dizziness, feelings of worthlessness, and then F-U, quote unquote. That's actually from Carolyn Means. And have we all maybe had a time where we just felt that, like, to the world, you know? We do. We have those moments, and it's almost like a rebellion thing, but that rebellion is usually rooted in a lack of trust in the one that's in control. But the thing that really sticks out to me here is this was given to Jesus when he was born. Was Jesus not here? I don't get emotional, but and sent away from his Father to come here, and God sends him something to help him in that moment. I'm still here with you, and this is something that he would recognize. Beth Moore talks about this in her study on the temple. I can't remember what it's called, but where, you know, that incense and stuff. Do you think that he smelled that in heaven? Absolutely. If God, it was important for us to smell it here on earth. So that's a scent that Jesus would recognize, you know, in this human body, and God sent it to him. Like, that's amazing. So to think that this stuff is not important, or that it doesn't have any biblical connection, it's just insane. Like, it does. It has all kinds of biblical connections, and it is biblical for us to use it today to support us on an emotional level and on a spiritual level, because it's what God did. And there's some other really great examples too.
Frankincense is my favorite. When I did my Zyto scan, so there was a group of us, and so the rest of them, they had like 3 or 4 or more oils to bring them.
Mm-hmm.
My one and only oil was sacred frankincense, and so but I did not know any of this. And so it was during the time where I was going through my divorce, and I've had father issues and whatnot. So just hearing this, I'm going to try not to get emotional.
No,
but
yeah.
just hearing some of this, I'm like, okay, Lord, okay, all right. But my one and only oil to bring me back in line with everything was sacred frankincense.
That's awesome.
So I think that is just...
I've gotten to a point with Zyto scans where I've gotten to where I use that Carolyn Mean book, and we go to the emotional roots. And I've had people where we'll look at the physical things that oil can help with, and we'll look at the emotional things. Mm-hmm. And I've had people go, all of this fits me, like, I get it. And then you're able to see this physical issue is a manifestation of this emotional issue right here. And so that's really, when you get into it, and Dr. Caroline Leaf says that 85 to 95% of physical issues actually have an emotional root. So we can almost do more for ourselves and for others by talking about these things and really helping everybody understand, like, this is something that can help. We've had issues in our house within the past year where we're working on something and we're doing all the changes that we feel like we need to do to make it right on a physical level, and nothing's changing. And this was an issue with Titus, and so I finally got down, what's the emotional, what's going here? Like, there were some things that he did that made me realize this is an emotional issue. We literally stopped everything that we were doing on a physical side and went to, let's address this on an emotional level. And it made a difference, you know? And so,
Change your state, change your focus.
yes, yeah. I mean, and we were doing things from a natural perspective. We were doing, you know, nothing was working. So when you feel like you're doing things, and you're like, I'm doing this and this and this, and nothing seems to be working, start looking at those emotional roots. And it's a hard thing. It's a scary thing to
One
uproot.
of the things I saw, I just got this book yesterday, and she mentions that basically just giving you, it's not your fault, you know?
Mm-hmm.
That your body, it's a natural response, is trying to survive. And so these emotional issues or whatever's happened in the past, your life experiences, they're all stored within your body. And so it's just your body going into protective mode. And so
Yeah.
making those connections will help you eventually grow and then be able to get to your full potential. So
Yeah. It's funny because I haven't had a chance to read that first part. I read Feelings Buried Alive Never Die is another good one. I haven't had a chance to read the little front section in that, but I'm always using it as just a reference, just looking through. It's got so many great charts and stuff in it. It's a really good book. And I used it for this to pull in some of these emotions that the oils are connected to. So that's frankincense. And here it talks about in Leviticus 2:1, and when they offer a meat offering to the Lord, his offering shall be a fine flour, and he shall pour oil upon it and put frankincense thereon. So frankincense was part of that offering to God, that this is what we're offering up to cover our sins. And so that connection to Jesus is really strong, I feel like, because we, as believers, we know him to be that sacrifice that came. And to have the oils and things poured on the sacrifice there, and then a little bit we'll talk about how Jesus was anointed before he was crucified. So hyssop is the next oil that we're going to talk about. Hyssop is another one that has a little child protective cap on it. And this is the oil of identity. Make sure. I'm flipping back through several things here. And so I didn't want to type all this up in my notes because I had it right here, but now I'm forgetting to go back and forth. I think I said everything about frankincense. So we'll talk about hyssop here.
that's a precious or costly oil, if I'm correct?
Hyssop?
Yeah.
I'm not even positive what I got it in my kit, my Aroma Complete, so I don't even know what the cost of hyssop is on its own. It smells like chocolate.
Honey and chocolate.
Honey and chocolate. It does smell like chocolate. It smells kind of like, it has like a bitter, like a deep bitter smell to it.
I've never smelled this one.
So it's not as it's been closed, so mine smells more vapory to me, I feel like, than that one does.
It's like a chocolate berry.
So hyssop, we'll move. There we go. Hyssop. In Exodus 12:22, it says, take a bunch of hyssop, dip it in the blood that's in the basin, and strike the lintel and the two side posts. So this is when the angel was passing over in Egypt, and hyssop was a part of that, the lamb's blood going on their doorposts so that the angel would pass over their homes. So here it says, animal sacrifices were offered almost daily in Jewish temples, which could result in a bad odor problem.
Yeah.
However, the Jewish congregation regularly supplied the priests with fresh, fragrant herbs, which were scattered on the temple floor each morning. When people walked over them, crushing their leaves and stems, their fragrant oils would be released and freshen the air. The scripture above refers to the first Passover. So when you think about that, there's a lot of, you can assume a lot of different uses for that, just knowing that that's how it was used historically. But here it says it helps with finding true identity on an emotional level. In situations where we may be identified by the pain and trauma of our life, survival mode is what I put here, because that's what I think of. When somebody kind of gets in that mode of, I've got to do this, and I've got to do this, and I've got to do this, and that's all they're identified by because they're just doing what they can to survive. And sometimes that's because a major life circumstance happens, divorce, single moms deal with this sometimes. I just got to get through. So they're defined by being a single mom. They're defined and sometimes by that pain, that divorce. People that have been through major abuse situations. This can give hope and perception, helping people distinguish from their wounds and themselves. So this is something that happened to me. It is not me. This is something that is a hurt part of my life or a bad part of my life, but it doesn't define who I am. Gives the perspective that experiences can make an impression on us, but do not have to define us. Offers the hope of joy and helps you learn to laugh again. Helps lay down the story of pain and sorrow and experience life anew. So the emotions are identification with wounds, deep emotional pain, anguish, serious, seeing life as painful, and swallowed emotions. But you can imagine if people are coming into the temple to make sacrifices, are they bringing pain with that? Are they bringing emotional things with that? Is there a part of walking over herbs of, hyssop that will help them release that and say, okay, this is now in the past. This is over. This is not a part of who you are. And so that was even a part of the ritual that they may not have even realized was helping them on a physiological level let go of what they had done and move forward in who they are in Christ. This is, in fact, had I known all of this, in fact, even just learning this now, this is going to be used on my son. We are dealing with victim mentality in our household right now, and it was a lot of what he dealt with last year too. And it's like, okay, no, this is something that happened to you. This is one situation where one person reacted. Doesn't mean every situation is going to be that way. It doesn't mean that's who you are. That has to define you. But instead, we're going to, so this is one that I have out to keep on his bedside. Maybe dilute it and make a little balm with it. So, yes. Okay, now we're going to talk about myrrh. Oh, myrrh, I have them in different order here. Okay, we're going to talk about myrtle, and then we'll come back to myrrh. Okay, so we're going to talk about myrtle. Myrtle is known as the oil of adaptability. Myrtle is one we actually have used a lot in our house. For several different reasons. It's great for the respiratory system, I've learned. It's also really great for the endocrine system. So when I'm super busy, it's in EndoFlex. So for those of you that love that blend. So those are the things that I know about myrtle going into this. And then when I start looking at the spiritual side of it, I'm like, oh, maybe I need myrtle on another level too. But it's the oil of adaptability. Looking here, I wanted to see what Isaiah 53:13 says, instead of the thorn shall come up the fir tree, and instead of the briar shall come up the myrtle tree, and it shall be to the Lord for a name, for an everlasting sign that shall not be cut off. And here it says, to the ancient Jews, the myrtle tree was a symbol of peace and justice, as well as a source for a healing oil. In celebration of their freedom from Babylonian captivity and restoration of the law of Moses, the Jews gathered branches of myrtle. In biblical times, myrtle oil was used for purification, for supporting the endocrine system, and for the respiratory system. So even during biblical times, it was used for those things. So as far as adaptability, and how it helps us on an emotional level, it infuses the soul with flexibility, adaptability, and resilience. Uplifts the heart and allows things to flow naturally. Helps during times of conflict when facing extreme challenges. It's great for those who rigidly hold to one way of doing things. I feel like that's kind of a pattern here in all of these, like the rigidity of wanting to do things your way and not being open to maybe how God's trying to move. Those that might be self-righteous. Because of inflexibility and unwillingness to adapt, the individual often repeats the same ineffective behaviors, caught in a cycle of repeating the same mistakes over and over again. Self-sabotage is what I call that. Myrtle helps break the cycle by increasing flexibility, admitting when they are wrong, and empowering them to make new choices. Teaches that the willingness to adapt and change is the key to overcoming even the most difficult obstacles in life. I find this so interesting that what he talked about here was that this was a celebration oil used after they were released from captivity in Babylon, where they were kind of stuck because of, in a lot of ways, their own choices that they made. And it was it was a punishment. It was a judgment on them. And to come out and go, we're going to change. This is going to be a new way. We're going to be thankful for what God has given us. We're going to get out of this cycle, because that, if you read the Old Testament, is pretty consistent cycle that the Israelites had of like coming back to God and then turning away from God and being judged by God, coming back to God. And so like, we're going to break this and we're going to get out of this, and so myrtle could actually be helpful in that process of, okay, we're going to move forward and make a new path. It purifies from uncleanness, supports the endocrine system, the respiratory system, and the emotions that it helps are inflexibility, rigidity, stiff, unwilling to bend or adapt, need to be right, pride, and the suppression of life. So I thought that one was very interesting. Suppression of life. That was myrtle. Okay, now we're going to go to myrrh, which is one that I'm excited to talk about too. Not that I'm not excited to talk about all of them, but myrrh, in Matthew 2:11, it says, they saw the young child with Mary his mother, fell down and worshipped him. And when they had opened their treasures, they presented to him gifts, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. So this is another one. Okay, now it came open here, so you're going to have to... Myrrh is a very thick oil. So if, in fact, frankincense and myrrh are both promos this month. It's a very thick oil. In fact, I'm gonna do this and walk around. Sorry, you guys, I'm walking around because the thing fell off, and I don't want to
Spill the whole thing.
spill the whole thing. But it's almost when you open it, it'll get kind of crusty and sticky on the top. See, it took the whole top off with it. But if it's not coming out very well, just rub it in your hands, warm it up a little bit, because it's just a really thick, kind of syrupy oil.
Yeah, I even tried to coat the top of the lid with, some sort of like olive oil or something like that, hoping that would help keep it.
Yeah, and it didn't work.
It didn't really work. So
Yeah.
it's definitely.
It's great for the skin. That's what I always know. Is like, oh,
The
it's good for
viscosity of it
skin.
is crazy.
Yeah, it's
Worse
just
than,
really thick,
Syrup.
really syrupy, really sticky. Vetiver is another one that's like that too, where you're just kind of like.
I was thinking maybe I should just turn the whole thing into a, go ahead and dilute it when I first open
yeah.
the bottle.
Yeah, that might be helpful, or at least just always, whenever you use it, add it to get a little dropper, pull it out like that.
If I actually had to use a toothpick to get mine out at this point now.
Oh,
It
yeah.
won't pour out.
Yeah.
You have to,
Yeah.
scrape it out.
Scoop. I mean, you don't want to waste any of that. You don't want to waste any of it. So, so if you got the promo oil this month, know that myrrh is very thick, and it will get kind of crusty around the top. So you might want to try, although Lana said she tried this, you might want to try putting carrier oil on the top as soon as you open it, so that it doesn't get stuck. Oh, look, the thing came on there, but it actually pulled the whole top off with the lid because it was stuck on the inside. So anyways, just so you know, myrrh is really, really thick. So obviously this was the other gift to Jesus. Well, frankincense, we talked about frankincense and father issues. Myrrh is actually known as the oil of the mother. And so I thought that was really interesting. Even though frankincense is called the oil of truth, myrrh is actually called the oil of the mother. It supports those who have issues with mother-child bond or lack of attachment. Could be due to adoption, birth trauma, malnourishment. This is good for you guys to remember, Matt. Experiences of abandonment, helps feel the love and nurturing presence of mother and protect from the adverse and harmful effects of the world. Helps in feeling safe and secure like a mother's love. When the mother-child bond is disrupted, we lose the ability to trust. So again, we're going back to that trust. And replaced with fear and belief that the world is unsafe. Myrrh assists in letting go of fear and rekindles trust within the soul, restoring confidence in the goodness of life and the goodness of God, so the soul feels safe and at home. So again, God sent this to Jesus when he was here, you know, and so it's just really powerful when you look at it from that perspective. The emotions it can be great for is disrupted maternal connection, distrust of others, feeling unsafe in the world, malnourished, fear of facing the world, and difficulty. So if you know people who adopt kids, foster kids, anything like that, Myrrh can be really powerful and helpful in those situations. Just the emotional connection there. Let's see here. Again, I'm going back and forth between all of these, but here it says, myrrh is the most frequently mentioned oil of the Bible, 156 times. It is the first oil mentioned in the Old Testament, Genesis 35:25, and the last to be mentioned in the New Testament, Revelation 18:13. It was one of the first to be received by the Christ child along with frankincense, and the last to be offered as he stood at the cross. It's really interesting. I'd like to go look at, it's one of those where I go, I think there's more to that, to go and look into it and go, what is the connection here? Why would God have that at the beginning, right there at those pivotal moments, and at the very end? You know, and if it's that, what?
I wonder if it's a gateway to and from
Yeah.
different types of universe.
Yeah. Could also be that support, that encouragement, that.
Well, and you think the Holy Spirit too, because he's also working the Holy Spirit, and the Spirit was here from the beginning to the end.
Mm-hmm.
And so, as frankincense was to remind him of the Father, maybe the myrrh was also
Mm-hmm.
to remind him of, you know, the Spirit.
Well, that's the comfort
Spirit,
side of it. The comforter, that is that side of it. I mean, in the beginning, that love is there, that comfort, that encouragement, and that those times that are really hard, that comfort is there. And then at the end, when it's all, you know,
And we're sealed
That's
with the
that.
Spirit,
Mhm.
you know, for
yeah,
I mean, he
That's
did have
good.
to spend time on earth as a man. I mean, as a man and among us. So,
yeah.
he's going to be away from his father.
Mm-hmm. And God, there's another Beth Moore study that talks about that mother-father side of God. Like God has those maternal attributes and those paternal attributes, and how we relate to God sometimes shows maybe some of the struggles we've had in with our own parents, the sides of God that we tend to connect to and the sides that we don't, you know, and things like that. So I was thinking about that a lot as I was thinking about the frankincense and myrrh, that mother-father oil. Like if you tend to lean more to one side, you know, if you had a strong connection with your mother, but maybe not a great connection with your father, then sometimes you tend to lean more into that grace. You know, oh, grace covers everything, you know, because, you know, and that side of it, and that's easy for you to connect to, but you have a hard time with maybe the righteousness and the judgment of God, which is also true and correct, you know. Instead, you want to shy away from that and only lean into grace. Whereas if you struggle with maybe the mother side and connecting with that mother side, and you lean into the father and the father side, you might tend to be more legalistic, judgmental, and not lean into the grace, which God is both. He's gracious and loving and nurturing, and he has, you know, rules and laws and judgment, you know, and they're equal, and they're both equally as important in our relationship with him. But most of us struggle, you know, on that balance of one side or the other, maybe depending on the situation. But, you know, using these two oils in combination might be really helpful.
And one of his
In that.
names, I can't remember which one it is. It's not, I don't think it's El Shaddai, but when you heard Tony Evans going through, you know, the names one time, and he said one of his names means the breasted one.
Mm-hmm.
So you think of, you know, of the mother.
The nurturing one, yeah. Source of life,
I can't remember which.
yeah.
Is that something you could diffuse? Can you diffuse myrrh, or is it more topical?
I think you could, but it's so thick. I don't know that I would. It would be one you might want to do topically. So,
Just curious.
yeah. Again, a balm, like pre-mix into some coconut oil. Stick a little label on top that says myrrh. You know, this is what or olive oil, and use it in that way. Yeah.
Yeah, I think just getting it out of the bottle. The next time I get a new bottle, I think I might just put it all in
Yeah.
a little jar that I can
Yeah.
get into it easier.
So if you get yours this month, have a plan what you're gonna do with it, and how you're gonna do it.
It's great.
Mm-hmm. It is. It's good. It's a great oil.
I've
It
never
just.
used it for any of these things.
I know. Well, I haven't, and I don't use it very much. I don't know that I've used. I tend to go to frankincense if I'm going to do skin stuff. So I really haven't used myrrh very much at all. So, I mean, now that I've got some extra coming this month, and so I'm like, okay, well, let's use it. Let's get it, and I might do that. Just put it in a balm because I've got another one that's already in a bottle. So then you have one of each, already pre-diluted, ready to go, and so. Very interesting. Okay, this is an oil. Rose of Sharon. No. Yes. No. What's next? My order here is different than my oil there, or my order there. Okay, so not Rose of Sharon. Oops. Anika is, I think, how do you say this? Anika? I'm not even sure, but it's also called benzoin. Because that's one of the components in it, one of the chemical components of it. And that's the one that you can find a lot more information on. Because they made tinctures out of it and things like that. They've even used it in hospitals. He's nodding over here. They use it in hospitals and things like that. Ooh, it actually smells really good. It kind of has it's more of a floral, sweet scent than I expected. But it is used for purification, used in hospitals, and used in the holy incense by Moses to purify the temple. It can also be cleansing to the spirit and the emotions. It can help to release the energy of suppression, of suppressed feelings, of suppression and feelings of being eliminated or annihilated. So if you are personally feeling suppressed or eliminated, annihilated.
I just want to keep smelling
It does. It smells good.
We'll pass it back over to you. That's okay.
It promotes feelings of liberation, freedom, and emancipation. Here the verse is, and the Lord, Exodus 30, 34, and 35. It says, "And the Lord said unto Moses, Take unto the sweet spices," I don't know how to say that, stacte, S-T-A-C-T-E, "and onycha and galbanum, these sweet spices with pure frankincense, and make an incense." And when we go to galbanum here in a minute, we're going to talk about that.
It's related to Cassia. It's kind of got
That
smell.
sweet, yeah. Here it says, while onycha oil was used in the holy incense of Exodus 30, its modern uses have been extensive. It has a wonderful odor of vanilla because it contains vanillin aldehyde, also found in the vanilla plant. Onycha contains more acids than any other oil, including benzoic acid. This oil has been used for purification and providing a calming scent. I can see that calming scent. It's just it's not as sharp as like the cinnamon, but it has a little bit of that cinnamon. It's really nice. I've never smelled this oil before. So this is one of those that I couldn't find a whole lot on the emotional side or anything. But the one emotion that it's connected with is terror. So, and then when you go back to it, it says it helps release feelings of suppression and being eliminated or annihilated. I mean,
How many of us are thinking that?
I know, right? Yeah.
Well, and to calm you, it's used in hospitals and stuff. It's used in, especially pre-hospital stuff, it's used in very extreme situations. I mean, you're about to do surgery in a short amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if it calms terror, what more of a moment of terror than being in a situation where you need that?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
That is really interesting. Promotes feelings of liberation, freedom, and emancipation. I just think that's all that I could even really find on that oil, because when it's talked about in the Bible, it's talked about in combination with frankincense and galbanum. And galbanum is another one we'll talk about at the end. It's another one I couldn't find a whole lot about on the emotional side.
It would be interesting though if, since God said to put all those together to make an incense that they burn.
Mm-hmm.
So just doing a study on those and how they all come together.
I
That'd be
think
interesting.
in his full book he has like what all of it would be and what that would look like if you created something, created something like that, or what all was in it. Rose of Sharon is the next one, also called cistus. And the Song of Solomon 2:1 says, I am the rose of Sharon and the lily of the valley. So this is something that God referenced himself to. And it was really interesting when I looked into this, because really when you look up this oil or this plant, you don't find a whole lot about uses of it, but you find a lot of, like, this was just a natural thing that they came across all the time, because it just grew in the fields. Like, it grew in the rocky places, it grew in, and so the shepherds would just come across it all the time. It was just something, it'd be like us coming across dandelions. Like, just like that, common and natural to them. And so,
This one is pricey. I've looked it up. My brother wanted to know if I could get him, if Young Living carried it, and I looked it up, and he's like, well, I'm only making like a beer or a
yeah, not really wanting to spend that much. Is there a different option? Yeah. It's also, and it's known by a lot of different names. So if you order it through Young Living, I think it's called cistus most of the time, except in this kit. It's called the Rose of Sharon. But it's also known as labdanum and rock rose. It's not the traditional sweet-smelling flower with the thorny stems we think of with rose. It's a wild bloom that has grown on the plains of Sharon, west of Jerusalem, for thousands of years. Rose of Sharon has been very helpful in first aid type responses. So this is something that the shepherds were used to using. Oh, I found it. Here it is. It's something that I need. Just using it. And relief. So this is one. It's funny because you don't really, in not being able to find a whole lot about it, except that it's just relaxing. It was just really common. And I just kind of, the words that came out to me with it were, the shepherds, the green pastures. I started thinking about, obviously, Psalm 23, and, God leads us beside the still waters. It helps quiet the mind and stimulate the five senses. And you can imagine if the shepherds are outside, they can be thinking about what's going on elsewhere. And how easy, it would be hard to be a shepherd for me, because too much time sitting and thinking, and your mind wandering, and then, like, my sheep would be, like, all over the place. I don't know. I don't know that I would be a good shepherd, but, kind of focusing the mind, clearing the mind, but allowing you to be present in the moment. And I actually wanted to look and see, I bet it's not, if it's a valuable oil, it might not be in something like present time, but would it be there,
I remember when I was looking it up, you do have to look for cistus. So whenever
cistus, yes.
If
you want just this oil, you have to get cistus. Yeah.
Well, and the Rose of Sharon is a very popular old-time plant, bush.
Yeah.
And it is a rose that does have no thorns, and it is like a big bush. The last home that we had was a 120-year-old home, and our whole front yard had the Rose of Sharon, and the neighbors, you could tell who shared plants, because that's what you used to do back then.
Yeah,
you shared plants. And the Rose of Sharon was really, a lot of people had those in the town. So it was a popular old-fashioned plant.
Really? Like decorative plant here?
Yeah, like a bush.
Oh.
Yeah, like it was big.
I wonder if is it the same one? Do you know? Like this one?
Well, it's called Rose of Sharon.
Rose of Sharon,
And there's a book, a little kid's book about the Rose of Sharon. That's biblically based.
Yeah.
Right.
That's interesting. I don't know, because I don't know that I would even really know what it looks like. I don't have a clue. But some of the other things that it does talk about here is it assists those who need to be constant rescuers to the point where they exhaust and drain their own well-being. And I put boundaries, enablers. That's what I put here. That's just what I think of. But I mean, it could be even in a positive way. Yeah. Maybe you're helping people that really need help and need it. But yeah,
PTSD. And, for again, adoption, foster for the what is it? Care exhaustion. I can't think of it.
Yes, yeah.
You know what I'm talking
Caretaker.
about.
Yes, yeah.
I can't think of the exact phrase, but I mean all of that.
Yeah.
Come into play there.
Yes. So it's, when you think about that, again, there's this idea for me, just in all of those things, of letting God take care of it. Like being still, God is leading you, you know, in places of rest and quietness. Just be still, let him take care of it. Not striving for, you know, and that to me is just like, okay, just that relaxation. Take this time, relax, be still. Know that I'm God, I got this, you know, instead of always doing things in our own power. It's also really great for the skin, respiratory support, and the emotions it deals with is rescuer. That hero complex. I know some people with hero complex. I know a lot of TV characters, the hero complex. Can we send this to characters in TV shows, you know? But anyways. Okay, we are now, those are the oils that are actually in the kit now. They took out galbanum and spikenard because they have had a really hard time sourcing them and keeping them in stock. So because they were having a hard time with those two oils, the whole kit has been out of stock now for a while. So they were like, okay, we're just going to redo the kit with only 10 oils, take those two out so people can actually get the other ones. Carrie has the original kit, so we're going to pass these two oils around. I am going to go ahead and talk about them because galbanum was one that I didn't know a whole lot about, and I didn't really find a whole lot about. Again, it was just kind of in there with the onycha and the frankincense, but I do want to say a lot about spikenard. But we'll talk about galbanum first. Galbanum helps with, let me see what Dr. Stewart says about it first. Galbanum was one of the 4 oils in the holy incense, which has been burned in Jewish temples for thousands of years, a combination with myrrh, onycha, and frankincense. Historically, it has been used for relief, respiratory support, and skin support. Looking for compliant ways to say what he says here.
Yeah.
You're free to look up. So, anyway, so this is galbanum. It smells familiar to me, but I can't peg what it smells like. It smells like another oil, but it reminds me of one of the others, and I can't pinpoint what it is.
Feel like peas.
Peas?
Green peas.
I was just saying,
And
positive way.
It's like,
or,
yeah, no, it's not a bad, I mean, it's not a bad, it's not like a flowery smell. It's not necessarily one, but it's not a bad smell. It's like grass.
Yeah, that's where the green peas and the grass and the dirt. Yeah. More earthy.
Yeah, it's earthy, but it's clean. It's not
Right,
like,
that's what I was thinking. It's more of a clean scent.
yeah, it's actually really nice. But one of the things it helps us with on an emotional level is letting go of old belief systems. And I just thought pharisaical, you know, legalism, that's what I tend to think of, because those are some of the old belief systems personally I've had to overcome. So that's where my mind goes when I hear that. And embrace truth. So God's truth. Very calming and grounding. Helps us when we're seeking direction. Heightens prayer and meditation. So you can imagine if you're in a moment of seeking direction, needing to be able to hear that quiet nudging of the Holy Spirit, that this is one of the things that helps. So it's interesting you look at this, and again, those 4 oils together, you've got the protection of the Father, the truth there. You've got the Mother, the myrrh, which is the calming, the soothing, the love and protection there. And then you have the onycha, which is for purification, kind of us letting go of our fears and letting go and holding on to the freedom that God has. And then galbanum, letting go of our old belief systems, like those old things. Like you could see how those would work together in kind of that combination, and it's just really, really fascinating. But it's good for cellular reprogramming, great for the skin, and respiratory support. I want to look up more about those 4 together because I just think that's super interesting. Okay, spikenard. Spikenard is known as the oil of gratitude. This is the last one that we're going to pass around today. And I know that I know Lynn at least, this one does not smell great, just so you know. Not my favorite scent. But I know Lynn at least saw me, I posted something about this. It was at Easter, wasn't it? Because I gave her a little bit. I have some spikenard. But it's known as the oil of gratitude. But my first exposure to spikenard was actually a friend talking to me about how it was used on Jesus. Spikenard is the oil Jesus was anointed with. I thought it was only once, but Dr. David Stewart says twice the week before he was crucified. And he was anointed at the Last Supper before he went into the garden, before the Last Supper, or during the Last Supper, and then he went into the Garden of Gethsemane. So when we start talking about spikenard and how it helps us on an emotional level, I want you to really think about that and when it was used biblically. But it's known as the oil of gratitude. Let's go back here and see what Dr. Stewart says. It says it was an ancient custom to honor distinguished guests by anointing their head or feet with spikenard. Jesus was anointed twice with spikenard the week before he died. The fragrance from the essential oil has been used in relieving fear and anxiety and preparing the body for burial.
I have a memory whenever I smell it.
Yeah, you do.
It smells like some sort of maybe over-the-counter cough syrup or some sort of medicine that I took as a child, possibly.
Yeah. There's a memory there.
Yeah, there's memory there. It didn't smell bad, actually,
Yeah.
to me. It's
Yeah.
not weird, like
Yeah.
some others.
Yeah, it's not my favorite. Not my favorite. But spikenard is known as the oil of gratitude, and seeing it related in that way was going in and learning a little bit more. It's the first time I'd heard that. But it encourages appreciation for life. Addresses patterns of ingratitude where individuals see themselves as the target of bad luck or a victim of their circumstances. So we are going to combine this one with hyssop. And we're so victim mentality leading to blame and anger. So we want to blame it on, well, this is just how life is, or it always, everything always seems to happen to me and all that kind of stuff. Instead of people wanting to look at, okay, why am I drawing this in, or what choices am I making that's making all of this happen? Helps us surrender and accept life as is and appreciate all life's experiences. By inviting acceptance and gratitude, it helps tie to a deeper meaning in life. Even bad experiences have purpose in our lives. So it supports us in feeling joy and happiness for others as well as ourselves. So even when we're going through a tough time, when you get in that victim mentality, it can be hard to be, encouraging to someone else who's having a great time, or be happy for them because you're frustrated with where you are. It invites individuals to let go of resistance, anger, and blame. Gratitude is an expression of complete acceptance and abundance. And in here I put submission and trust in God's will and plan for our lives.
Well, you could see why Jesus would need that twice before he was crucified, for the human side of him.
Exactly. Contentment with what we have and grateful for challenges and blessings. It helps, and this is one of the first things that I learned about it, helps us release our will for God's will. And is that not what Jesus prayed about in the garden? He's like, please let this not happen. I mean, you have to understand on a human level how badly Jesus did not want to go through what he was going through, but he was submitting to God's will. But whatever, your will be done. Please, if there's any other way, but your will be done. And God allowed him to be anointed with an oil that's going to help him on a physiological level in that moment. That's amazing to me. So in Jesus's life, at birth, right before his crucifixion, and at his crucifixion, if myrrh was offered to him there, then there were, you had God supporting his son here on earth throughout his journey and the choices and the things that he was going to have to do. It relieves fear and anxiety, burial preparation. The emotions, it works on our ingratitude, resistance, victim mentality, anger, irritability, Greed, selfishness, that's that whole misuse of the will. I want my way. Fear, expecting bad luck. Estranged, misuse of will. And then struggle with power, authority figures that maybe want to use their power in a bad way. So that is all of the oils of ancient scripture. And these are my references. There's actually one more because I did not put this other book. Yes.
Did you say the last two, Galvin and Spikenard, they are not?
They are not in the kit. They literally just redid the kit
But they are
2 weeks ago.
You can still get them.
You can get them right now. They're out of stock.
Got it.
But they will be back. So them being out was keeping the whole kit out of stock.
Okay.
So you can keep if you want to get the kit, and they've redone the price too. So for the 10 oils, you can get the kit and then just wait for those two to come back in. So, anyways, but the other reference, the thing that I used that I forgot to put on here is one called Emotional Healing with Essential Oils. He comes at it, I think, a little bit from more of a New Age perspective and not so much from a biblical perspective, but he's got some really good truths in there. He just, don't throw the baby out with bathwater. He's got some good things on how the emotions work, and that whole first part that I read about him, about that uprooting, and the oils actually not doing the work for you. You have to do the work. Is all from his book.
What was his name?
I have to look. It's called Emotional Healing with Essential Oils.
Okay.
I actually think he is a leader in another company, but he talks about singles, and it's not a very big book. I actually have that. I've been meaning to order it for a long time, but to get it for this, I actually just ordered the ebook, and so I want to get the actual book.
It's nice to have the actual book.
The actual book, I know. Especially when you're researching and you're trying to pull all this stuff together. Experience Essential Oils is a really great website. Again, I think she sometimes comes from a little bit of a New Age perspective, but she brings in biblical references, historical uses, and she talks a lot about the way that oils help us on a spiritual level and emotional level. And she doesn't say a whole lot about physical. She keeps her website compliant, but she talks about every oil and blend that Young Living has. I've used it a lot in research and stuff. And she's done a good job keeping it compliant. So she hasn't been. When we're talking about emotional stuff, you can say so much more. And so it gives us that freedom when we focus on the emotions to really help people, because we can do, if that's the root anyway of a lot of physical issues. So anyways, that's what I have for you guys. I will screenshot. In fact, I'll post all of these, all the slides on with updates, because I saw lots of typos on here. Sorry, guys. And I'll fix them, and then I'll post them for all of you guys to see. Thanks for joining us. See you guys later.